The first drop fell upon the gilded dial of an expensive chronometer not from the sky, but from a painted ceiling 180 meters above the ground. In the enclosed space with turned-off air conditioners reigned a stifling twilight, filled with a strange hum like the breathing of a leviathan trapped in concrete. A man in a sweat-soaked tuxedo raised his head and froze in sacred horror. Right beneath the dome of the gigantic atrium, among marble, gold leaf, and panoramic glass, floated actual heavy gray-white clouds. In the heart of the scorching desert, inside the most expensive building on the planet, a proper tempestuous cyclone was being born, threatening to destroy everything around even before the arrival of the first honored guests. A second heavy impact of moisture struck directly against the leather binding of an engineering tablet, spreading into a dark stain over the flawless blueprints. The world's tallest vertical cavern of concrete and glass lived a mind of its own, completely defying human calculations and the laws of reason. Below, on the polished marble slabs, the first puddles were already pooling, reflecting a surreal vision of a foggy looking-glass. Every breath came with immense difficulty, as if the air inside the hall had turned into a scalding thick jelly. The destructive humidity of the Persian Gulf seeped through hidden crevices, swiftly ruining the immaculate interior finishes worth millions of dollars. Just a few minutes later, the light drizzle gave way to dense, cold streams falling from an unprecedented height straight onto the grand staircase. The gold leaf elevators froze between floors due to a fault in the sensors reacting to sudden shifts in pressure and humidity. On the upper levels, a true storm erupted where streams of cold air from emergency units collided with the scorching breath of the desert. The air grew thick with the distinct smell of ozone and burning insulation, foretelling the inevitable short circuit of the hotel's entire central power grid. The massive glass panels of the facade began to emit an ominous hum, the vibration of which echoed through the deepest concrete structures. The chief engineer frantically wiped his sweat and water-blinded eyes with his sleeve, trying to discern the indicators of the control panel through the mist. Any minute now, motorcades of dozens of armored limousines carrying royal figures were set to arrive at the main entrance. A scandal of such magnitude threatened not merely the ruin of a career, but the total destruction of the reputation of a nation that had wagered everything on this architectural triumph. Yet physics possessed no reverence for monarchs and billions, continuing to thicken the storm clouds right above the head of the desperate creator. The impossible had to be accomplished, forcing the enraged element to submit to human will in a matter of fleeting moments. A flash of static electricity illuminated the marble walls, for a second turning the sealed atrium into a gigantic cavern of thunder. A dull roar erupted, picked up by the hollow echo and reverberating in the crystal chandeliers of the lower hall. The entire grand sail structure shuddered, transforming from a symbol of luxury into a deadly trap for anyone who might cross its threshold. Salvation lay solely in the depths of the subterranean levels, where this nightmare man-made storm had not yet managed to penetrate. Gathering the remnants of his resolve, the engineer rushed toward the service staircase, well aware that time was measured in the final seconds remaining before total disaster. The history of this man-made wonder began several years prior to that catastrophic night, when the finest architectural minds decided to erect a gigantic sail-shaped hotel on an artificial island hundreds of meters from the shore. The project's chief engineer, who had spent 40 months on calculations, took pride in every millimeter of concrete and steel, yet overlooked the treacherous nature of the laws of physics. The world's tallest atrium turned into a mammoth chimney where scorching Arabian air rushed upward, colliding at the summit with streams of ice-cold air-conditioned drafts. A temperature differential of 40 degrees and the colossal humidity of the Persian Gulf created the perfect conditions for the formation of internal precipitation, a phenomenon the building's creators had never even suspected. From its inception, the project was conceived as a challenge to nature itself, designed to demonstrate the absolute triumph of human intellect over the relentless heat of the endless desert. The rulers of the nation spared no billions, demanding the erection of an unprecedented monument to wealth directly amidst the sea waves. Tens of thousands of construction workers labored without rest under the scorching sun, driving massive pile structures into the shifting seabed. Every driven meter was won through struggle, but the architects were intoxicated by their own audacity and the scale of the emerging prospects. On the blueprints, everything appeared a flawless triumph of engineering thought, promising the world an incredible oasis of perfection and unparalleled technical progress. However, the ideal mathematical models on paper completely failed to account for the microscopic nuances capable of destroying the grand plan from within. In the race for record-breaking heights and staggering volumes, the creators relied entirely on computer simulations, ignoring the warnings of a few veteran thermodynamics experts. The interior space, standing nearly 200 meters tall, constituted a colossal closed ecosystem functioning according to its own peculiar rules. The high temperatures outside the thin glass facade continuously heated the tower's lower tiers, transforming the massive structure into a giant steam boiler. When the primary finishing works were completed and the halls were adorned with the most precious varieties of marble and gold leaf, the initial test run of all engineering nodes began. Powerful air conditioners were launched at full capacity to cool the scorching air inside the building within a matter of hours. It was then that the fatal mistake occurred, triggering the irreversible process of a man-made storm taking shape. A massive body of chilled, heavy air rushed downward, forcing the scalding, humid stream up toward the dome at immense speed. The resulting convection current gained momentum, converting the atrium into an uncontrollable climate engine. Engineers frantically attempted to balance the climate systems, but the sheer inertia of the air masses inside the tower had already surpassed all permissible limits. Accumulated moisture from the Persian Gulf continued to concentrate directly beneath the roof, condensing on the steel beam trusses and glass. Over the following 30 days, the engineering team concealed the first alarming symptoms from management, hoping to resolve the issue on their own. They did not yet realize that they had built not merely a luxurious hotel, but a genuine tempestuous atmospheric front, biding its time to pour down upon the heads of an unsuspecting global elite. On the evening of the grand opening, hundreds of sheiks, business tycoons, and global celebrities dressed in silk and diamonds began arriving at the foot of the tower. In the subterranean control bunker, the chief engineer and a dozen of his assistants watched in panic as the sensor readings went off the charts, threatening to blow out the protective relief valves. A massive surge of warm vapor was rising through the center of the building at tremendous speed, transforming the interior into a boiling cauldron. Guests in the lobby marveled at the unusual cool mist and light drizzle, mistaking what was happening for a revolutionary design concept and the ultimate expression of luxury, until heavy raindrops began leaving stains on their evening wear. From the outside, the artificial island looked like the embodiment of celestial grandeur, illuminated by hundreds of floodlights whose beams cut through the velvety darkness of the Arabian night. Long processions of black polished cars moved slowly across the curved bridge, bringing the planet's most influential people to the base of the crystal giant. The interior finishings, worth hundreds of millions of dollars, astounded even the most discerning aesthetes with their pomp and immaculate style. Poured gold fountain bowls, the rarest varieties of Italian marble, and giant aquariums created the illusion of a fairy tale palace. None of those attending suspected that inside this magnificent shell, a deadly physical timer was already ticking. In the basement dispatch center, the atmosphere could only be described as a prolonged death agony. Red warning indicators flashed one after another on the main control panel, while the wails of alarm sirens were drowned out only by the roar of subterranean pumps. The chief engineer gripped the edge of the steel table with trembling fingers, realizing that the ventilation system he had created had completely lost the ability to contain the rising pressure. The humidity differential between the lower floor and the upper dome reached a critical 98%. The internal thermal vortex was moving at the speed of a gale-force wind, carrying tons of moisture along with it. Meanwhile, in the central atrium, socialites and monarchs raised crystal flutes of vintage champagne to their lips, admiring the mysterious atmosphere. A fine silvery haze descending from the unreachable height created the illusion of an enchanted fog lit by millions of hidden LEDs. The musicians of the string quartet continued to play their cellos with inspiration, until the first heavy drop of condensed water fell directly onto the lead violinist's bow. Light laughter and applause from the guests muffled the first alarming splashes, as the crowd genuinely believed they were witnessing a brilliant performance staged by the world's finest architects and showmakers. However, with every passing minute, the natural element trapped within the walls of concrete and glass cast off its fake decorative masks. The cool drizzle rapidly turned into a heavy, full-fledged downpour falling from a height of 180 meters with a deafening roar. Expensive silk tuxedos and exclusive evening gowns began to soak through instantly, while deep puddles formed on the flawlessly polished granite floor slabs. The first low murmur of confusion swept through the hall as the lights overhead began to flicker with a threatening crackle, heralding an imminent and inevitable collapse. 40 minutes after the start of the reception, the situation completely spiraled out of control when the first flash of static lightning sparkled beneath the dome and a dull roll of thunder echoed through the hall. Water poured in torrents down the golden columns, flooding the expensive acoustic system and causing short circuits throughout the lighting grid. The engineering crew down below frantically attempted to manually redirect the ventilation flows to reduce the pressure and break the newly formed thermal loop. Every action they took resembled an attempt to tame a raging storm inside a crystal goblet, where the slightest mistake could lead to the shattering of the immense facade glass from the pressure differential. An electrical discharge traveling along the load-bearing beams instantly knocked out several central transformers at mid-height. The elite crowd below, consumed by panic, rushed toward the massive oak doors, but the electronic locks had jammed shut due to the power surge. The lights went out across the entire building, plunging the atrium into a sinister gloom ripped apart only by rare flashes of static electricity. Down in the lobby, a stampede broke out in which millionaires and aristocrats lost their shoes and abandoned precious jewelry while trying to escape the rising waters. The internal downpour washed the gilding off the walls, transforming the celebration of luxury into the horror of a sunken ancient temple. In the subterranean technical spaces, the air temperature soared to 45 degrees, turning the ventilation hubs into a veritable inferno. Engineers clad in soaked overalls frantically turned heavy cast-iron valves, attempting to relieve the monstrous pressure within the tower's central shaft. The rupture of any main air duct would mean the immediate destruction of internal structures and the loss of dozens of lives. Power cables were melting right before their eyes, filling the space with acrid chemical smoke that made every breath a struggle. The crew worked at the absolute limits of human endurance, fully aware that each second of delay brought disaster ever closer. The massive panoramic glass panels of the facade began to emit an ominous, high-pitched crackle, reacting to the colossal differential between the internal and external pressure. Outside the 100-meter tower lay a calm, dry night, while inside raged a true tropical hurricane tearing through the confined space. The shattering of the outer glazing would result in instant decompression and the inevitable collapse of several decorative tiers within the atrium. The chief engineer realized that the automated systems had failed entirely and that only direct manual intervention with the emergency dampers could save the building. He decided to act alone while the rest of the team struggled to hold the pressure. Forging ahead through a torrent of hot water gushing from damaged pipes, the engineer made his way toward the lowermost airtight compartment. In his hands he held only a single heavy wrench and a portable flashlight whose beam cut through clouds of dense steam in the dark. Above his head, the multi-million-dollar finishings of the building continued to crumble, while actual rivers of condensed water churned beneath his feet. To break the closed thermal cycle, it was necessary to manually seal the relief valves at the very bottom of the hotel, sacrificing the technical zone. Time to save hundreds of lives and the most expensive structure on the planet was rapidly running out. Realizing that the automated systems were failing, the chief engineer made a desperate decision and blocked the emergency relief valves in the hotel's lowermost technical tier. He personally descended into the scalding high-pressure zone to lock the levers manually and divert the accumulated condensate into backup subterranean drains. This caused the artificial cloud beneath the ceiling to dissipate in a matter of minutes, while the remaining steam rushed downward through specialized ventilation shafts. Guests in the main lobby burst into applause, genuinely believing they had witnessed an incredible lighting and climate show marking a new era of human genius. The heavy steel doors of the lower bunker slammed shut behind his back with a dull metallic thud, cutting off any route of retreat. Inside the narrow technological corridor, a deafening roar resounded, and the air temperature exceeded 50 degrees Celsius. Streams of boiling water burned his feet through thick leather boots, yet the engineer stubbornly pressed forward toward the central distribution manifold. Every step came with immense difficulty, as if breathing scalding steam was burning his lungs from within. In the pitch darkness, broken only by rare emergency flashes, he located the massive cast-iron lever of the primary valve and threw the full weight of his body against it. The mechanism did not yield immediately, resisting with a fierce metallic screech under the force of multi-ton compressed air pressure. The man summoned every remnant of his strength, leaning into the handle and feeling the scalding metal leave severe burns on his palms. With a powerful hiss, the emergency gate finally locked into a dead position, redirecting the raging torrent of accumulated condensate into deep underground reservoirs. A powerful shockwave swept through the central ventilation shafts, instantly reversing the direction of the air masses throughout the entire architectural complex and severing the deadly thermal cycle. Upstairs, in the central atrium, a true man-made miracle occurred, astounding everyone present with its suddenness. The dense gray cloud beneath the 180-meter dome began to melt away rapidly, drawn into the opening exhaust grills with a soft whistle. The flooding ceased within seconds, and the emergency lighting smoothly gave way to the soft golden radiance of the ceremonial chandeliers. Cascades of water on the marble walls sparkled with millions of iridescent reflections under the directed spotlights, creating the illusion of a fairy tale decorative waterfall. Panic in the lobby instantly turned into universal awe and indescribable delight. The high society crowd, who just a minute prior had been seeking salvation from disaster, froze in silent admiration before the brilliance of human intellect. Renowned actors, sheiks, and financial tycoons began to applaud enthusiastically, and the applause was picked up by the entire crowd, filling the atrium with a joyful roar. Not a single guest doubted that the nightmare they had experienced was merely a meticulously planned and spectacular show designed to demonstrate humanity's absolute mastery over the laws of nature. They wiped water droplets from their expensive attire with smiles on their faces, never suspecting the terrible price that had been paid in the darkness of the lower tiers for this fleeting triumph. The following morning, global newspapers ran with ecstatic headlines praising the man-made clouds and the history-first hotel with its very own controlled microclimate. Yet not a single one of the high-ranking guests or journalists ever learned at what cost this saving triumph had been bought. In the sealed cellars beneath a 5-meter layer of marble remained a locked airtight compartment where the chief engineer had forever secured the scorching steel dampers with his own hands. The hotel owners preferred to hide the tragedy forever and wall up the technical tier along with the man to preserve the flawless reputation of their primary symbol of wealth, while the guests above continued to carelessly sip champagne directly over his unmarked grave. Front pages of the international press were emblazoned with rapturous epithets directed at the creators of the architectural wonder who had overcome the harsh laws of nature. Television broadcasts vied with one another to praise the engineering genius capable of commanding the elements inside an enclosed space. Experts from around the globe analyzed the salvaged security camera footage, genuinely believing that the simulated storm was the pinnacle of modern design art. Not a single critic or reporter doubted the official narrative of the hotel management, who had swiftly issued a beautiful press release fairy tale. The greatest catastrophe of the century was transformed in an instant into a marketing masterpiece. At that very moment, in the deep subterranean horizons beneath the foundation of the atrium, a completely different, nightmare operation was underway. A night shift of a special security force, brought in from the furthest provinces, hastily dismantled directional signs and welded emergency hatches shut. All technical logs and electronic data storage containing information on the critical system failure were immediately confiscated and destroyed without a trace. The owners of the complex decided to erase the very existence of the lower technological bunker from all archives and construction schematics forever. The symbol of absolute prosperity could not afford to retain even the slightest mention of human demise. A massive concrete slab several meters thick permanently sealed off access to the lower airtight compartment, turning it into an eternal underground crypt. The chief engineer's hand remained locked in a death grip around the jammed lever whose safety valve had prevented the destruction of the entire structure. His name was neatly struck from the list of the project's creators, replaced by a line regarding a sudden resignation of his own accord 3 days prior to the opening. The victim's family was paid colossal severance for non-disclosure and eternal silence, with the tragedy presented as a routine disappearance in the wake of a nervous breakdown. Weeks passed, and inside the lavish halls of the sail-shaped hotel, laughter, the clinking of crystal flutes, and the enchanting sounds of live music resounded once more. The wealthiest people in the world continued to book suites for tens of thousands of dollars, admiring the immaculate chill and perfect dry air of the supreme atrium. None of them, stepping across the flawlessly polished Italian marble of the lobby, had the slightest inkling that directly beneath their feet lay the walled-up tomb of a man. The true creator of this man-made paradise rested in the scorching darkness of the foundation piles, holding up the tranquility and luxurious life of the global elite with his decayed remains.